The office of the Decemvirs was sold to the Roman public as the only viable solution to the long-standing feuds between the plebeians and the patricians. Its setting up was the second time the form of government in Rome was changed in a period of 300 years after the founding of the city. The first time was when the consuls replaced the king. The Decemvirs, however, turned out to be a poison chalice. It achieved the total opposite of its promise and posed the first serious threat to the Republic. In this video, I tell you the trickery that accompanied the creation of the office of the Decemvirs and how lust of one of the holders of the office led to its fall. I welcome you to my YouTube channel where I explore ancient texts, and ancient texts here I mean texts that have been around for thousands of years. At the moment, I'm going through from the founding of the city by Titus Livius or Livy. This is a collection of books that cover the history of Rome from the founding of the city by Romulus, which happened around the year 750 BCE, to the time when Augustus was the emperor, which was close to 0 AD. If you have not subscribed, subscribe so that you do not miss any of the videos I publish. Since the birth of the Republic, when Lucius Junius Brutus led Romans to drive away the kings, conflicts between the plebeians and the patricians, especially over the enactment of laws, had persisted. Around the year 451 BCE, the plebeians suggested the formation of a team comprising members from both classes to oversee the creation of laws that will end this conflict once and for all. The patricians welcomed this proposal but suggested that before the actual enactment was done, Rome needed to send ambassadors to Athens to copy the laws that had been written by the celebrated lawgiver Solon. When the three individuals came back to Rome, the Senate proposed the abolishment of consulship and the appointment of 10 individuals to take up their position and also guide the drafting of the new laws for the Republic. Also abolished were the offices of the tribunes of the people. These individuals who took the roles that the consuls used to perform were known as the Decemvirs, which translates to the team of 10. The initial list included Appius Claudius, Titus Genucius, Publius Cestius, Lucius Veturius, Caius Julius, Aulus Manlius, Savius Sulpicius, Publius Cariatius, Titus Romilius, and Spurius Postumius. Appius Claudius took the leadership of this team. He also seemed to have changed his attitude towards the common people. He came from a family that had always fought against and had been contemptuous of the people. Livy writes, "The direction of the entire government was rested in Appius through the favor of the commons, and he had assumed a demeanor so new that from a severe and harsh reviler of the people, he became suddenly a protector of the commons and a candidate for popular favor." The 10 individuals ruled through consensus and held the magistracy power through a rotation amongst them. Not long after they came into office, the Decemvirs drafted new laws that came to be known as the 10 Tables. When the drafting was done, they invited the public to go through them at the public assembly. Livy writes the following about the new laws. They had equalized the rights of all, both the highest and the lowest, as far as it could be devised by the abilities of 10 men, that the understanding and the counsel of a greater number might prove more successful, that they should turn in their minds each particular within themselves, converse it with conversation, and bring together under public discussion whatever might seem an excess or deficiency under each particular. With the people satisfied, the laws were passed at the assembly, and that was supposed to have been the end of the mandate of the Decemvirs. However, almost immediately, a rumor spread that there was an issue with 2 tables of the new law. This issue then became an excuse to request the public to give the Decemvirs more time in office. It was expected that they were going to use that time to audit and correct the laws. Livy describes the campaign for the re-election of Decemvirs as more intense and dramatic than the initial one. Livy writes, "But when the assembly for electing Decemvirs was proclaimed for the 3rd market day, so strong a flame of ambition blazed forth, that the first men of the state began to converse individuals, suppliantly soliciting for an honor which had been opposed by them with all their might, from that commons with whom they had so often contended. Appius Claudius seemed to have outdone himself in lowering his dignity to adhere himself to the plebeians so that he could get the authority to rule through the office of Decemvirs. Livy states that even fellow patricians started to feel uneasy with how Appius Claudius had started to carry himself in public. Livy writes, "His colleagues, who till then had been extremely devoted to him, turned their eyes on him, wondering what he meant. It was evident to them that there was no sincerity in it, that certainly such affability amid such pride will not be for nothing, that this excessive lowering of himself and putting himself on the level with the private citizens was not so much the conduct to be expected from someone hastening to go out of office, as of one seeking means of continuing that office. Nevertheless, Appius Claudius was elected alongside Marcus Cornelius Maluginensis, Marcus Sergius, Lucius Minucius, Quintus Fabius, Fibolanus, Quintus Poetelius, Titus Antonius Merenda, Caeso Duilius, Spurius Oppius Conicen, and Manius Rebuleus. Livy tells us that immediately after the elections were over, Appius Claudius turned to his old self. He stopped plundering to the public. Livy writes, henceforth he began to live according to his own natural disposition and to mold to his own temper his new colleagues before they will enter on their office. Livy tells us that the new team of Decemvirs under the leadership of Appius Claudius started to hold private meetings. And then, the first day they appeared in public, it was clear all was not well for the Republic. Instead of only one having the fasces, the emblems of royalty, which was supposed to be held in a rotation, each turned up with their own fasces. Livy says, as a matter of fact, there was the appearance of 10 kings. Also, the number of lictors accompanying them had increased significantly. Livy states that, quote, 120 lictors filled the forum. This demonstration of power immediately intimidated anyone who would have wanted to challenge the decisions of the Decemvirs. It wasn't long before a reign of terror started, especially on the plebeians. The people had no one to protect them, given that the office of the tribunes of the people had been suspended. The Decemvirs seemed to have their office turned from being a temporary one to being a permanent one. Livy writes, an opinion had gone abroad without an authority that they had conspired in their tyranny not only for the present time, but that a clandestine league had been struck amongst them with an oath that they will not hold a comitia, and that by perpetuating the Decemvirate, they will retain the power now in their possession. Indeed, Livy tells us that the two tables that had been the reason why the Decemvirs had been re-elected had been corrected, so the reason for the Decemvirs staying in office was non-existent. And when their stipulated time in office ended, they did not call for new elections. They now became simply private persons ruling over Romans. Livy writes, the Ides of May came, no new elections of magistrates having taken place. Private persons came forth as Decemvirs without any abatement, either in their determination to enforce their authority or any diminution in the emblems employed to make a parade of their station. This indeed seems to be regal tyranny. The attack of Rome by Sabines and Aquae exposed the precarious position the state was in. For the first time since they came into office, the Decemvirs called a meeting of the Senate. Initially, the senators ignored that invitation. The public also declined to join the army. When the senators finally showed up, mostly out of fear, many of them pointed out the illegality of the Decemvirs remaining in office. However, partly because of the threat of violence on dissenting voices and partly because of the war Rome was facing, they voted to stand with the Decemvirs. The people accepted to enlist for the war under the special circumstances. The war, at least initially, did not go well for Rome. In part, that was because the soldiers disliked the people who were leading them, the Decemvirs. There were some who were inciting the soldiers to rebel against the Decemvirs. The most prominent of these was Lucius Caesius. Livy writes, Lucius Caesius was serving in the campaign against the Sabines. Seeing the bitter feelings against the Decemvirs, he used to hold secret conversations with the soldiery and threw out hints about the creation of tribunes and resorting to a secession. He was, however, discovered before he could persuade a huge number of soldiers. The Decemvirs organized him to be assassinated. They assigned him the task of traveling to survey a new site for a camp. While on the way, he was killed, and reports were brought back that he was attacked alongside his party, and that's how he lost his life. However, the soldiers somehow discovered he had been assassinated by his own people, and that created even more resentment for the Decemvirs. But what ended up becoming the straw that broke the camel's back was Appius Claudius' lust for Virginia, the daughter of one of the generals Lucius Virginius. He decided to take her by force by having one of his friends claim that she was the daughter of his slave. This event ended up being similar to what brought an end to the reign of kings. During the reign of the last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, his son Sextus had taken Lucretia, the wife of his cousin, by force, and because of that, Lucretius took her life which triggered the revolution that turned Rome into a republic. Livy writes, "This was followed by a second atrocity, the result of brutal lust, which occurred in the city and led to the consequences no less tragic than the outrage and death of Lucretia, which had brought about the expulsion of the royal family. Not only was the end of the Decemvirs the same as that of the kings, but the cause of their losing their power was the same in each case. When the mother of Virginia and the rest of the family resisted, as the father was away on military assignment, it became a dispute that ended up in court, where Appius was the magistrate. Appius ruled in favor of his friend. Meanwhile, more people came to the defense of Virginia and forced that the case should be postponed until her father arrived. Appius accepted but sent a message to the command of the camp where her father was stationed, asking that he be arrested on trumped-up charges and therefore prevent him from coming to claim his daughter. However, by the time the letter with these instructions reached the camp, Virginius had already left. Virginius showed up the next morning in front of Appius, who proceeded to rule that he was not the father of Virginia. After this ruling, the father requested to have one last moment with his daughter. While no one was looking, he took out a knife and killed her. He said the following to her while doing it: "In this the only way in which I vindicate my child, your freedom." And then he shouted the following to Appius: "By this blood, Appius, I devote your head to the infernal gods." The lictors attempted to arrest Virginius and some of his supporters, but a crowd of people intervened. Soon the crowd was baying for the blood of Appius, and he escaped and hid. Meanwhile, Virginius returned to his camp and informed his colleagues of what had happened to his daughter. Livy writes, "Questioned as to what had happened, Virginius for a long time could not speak for weeping. At length, when those who had run up stood quietly around him and there was silence, he explained everything in order just as it happened. He appealed to them to help him avenge his daughter, for they too had daughters, sisters, and wives, and the lust of Appius was not quenched with his daughter's life. Nay, rather, the more impunity it met with, the more unbridled would it be." Virginius was able to have the majority of the soldiers and the public stand with him in working towards avenging the death of his daughter. The army and the people put pressure until the Decemvirs had no other option than to resign. The office of the tribunes of the people was reinstated, and Lucius Valerius and Marcus Horatius were elected consuls, and that is how the republic was saved. Appius Claudius was charged with not only the death of Virginia, but also that of Lucius Caesius. He was sent to prison, where he ended up dead by his own hands. If you enjoyed this video, take a moment to strike the like button. See you in the next video.